1. Power, Scandals, and Corruption. Christianity can survive without the gospel. Let me clarify. There is a form of Christianity that developed in medieval times that has survived to this day without the gospel. It is, of course, a powerless Christianity that cannot give people the assurance of salvation, nor does it lead to lives of holiness. But it is still called Christianity. Yes, whether Catholic or Protestant, every generation, including ours, has to fight for the purity of the gospel. It's our nature to reject the gospel's verdict on us and resist the profound simplicity of its transforming message of grace. The gospel must always be defended, and sometimes it must be rescued. By any estimation, at the close of the 15th century and the beginning of the 16th, the Catholic Church was in desperate need of reformation. Many of the church leaders were living in shameless decadence that bred cynicism among the common worshippers. Queen Isabella of Castile, 1451 to 1504, wrote that the majority of the clergy are living in open concubinage, and if our justice intervenes in order to punish them, they revolt and create a scandal, and that they despise our justice to the point that they arm themselves against it. Or consider this assessment of medieval Christianity by Andrea de Strumi. At that time, however, the ecclesiastical order was corrupted by so many errors that hardly anyone could be found who was truly in his proper place. Some served the pleasures of the hunt, wandering about with hounds and hawks. Others were tavern keepers and wicked overseers. Almost all led shameful lives either with wives who had been acknowledged publicly or with concubines. By this time, the gospel had been buried under centuries of traditions and superstitions. As one writer put it, we had too many churches, too many relics, true and fake, too many untruthful miracles. Instead of worshiping the only living Lord, we worshiped dead bones. In the place of immortal Christ, we worshipped mortal bread, the consecrated bread of the Mass. As the power of the Catholic Church grew, so did the exaggerated claims of spiritual authority. Priests who were taught that they had the power to turn ordinary bread and wine into the actual body and blood of Christ believed that they could also withhold or grant salvation to whomever they wished, and certainly the Pope could open heaven for his friends or send his enemies to hell. Clearly, the gospel needed to be rescued from the misleading traditions of medieval Christianity. Even ardent Catholics will admit that the Church needed reform, and needed it badly. They might wish that the reforms hadn't gone as far as they did under Luther, but they have to acknowledge that the Church had been sliding into corruption for centuries and that the abuses needed to be halted. The Babylonian captivity of the Church. Let's review a bit of history. Consider this scandal. Beginning in 1305 and lasting until 1377, a total of 72 years, there were 6 successive popes, all of French origin, ruling from Avignon in southern France. Can you imagine the reaction of the citizens of Rome to the humiliation that their city, believed for centuries to be the burial site of St. Peter's remains, no longer housed the papacy? This usurpation of authority was deeply resented not only in Italy but also in Germany. Since Rome refused to support the rebel papacy, the French popes raised money in any way they could, whether through taxes, wars, or bribery. This period in church history is known as the Babylonian captivity of the Church because the papacy was absent from Rome or held captive in France for 70 years, actually 72 years, just as Israel was held captive in Babylon for 70 years. The Italians were ecstatic when at last, in 1377, an Italian pope was elected and the papacy moved back to Rome. But now an even more embarrassing scandal erupted. The pope who had been ruling in Avignon refused to resign. Now there were 2 popes ruling simultaneously, and when both of them were deposed by the cardinals and a new pope elected, they both refused to accept the decision and stepped down. This resulted in 3 popes ruling at the same time. All 3 claimed to be the legitimate successor to Peter, calling the others Antichrist and selling indulgences to make enough money to fight against the other 2. It wasn't until the Council of Constance in 1414 that all 3 popes stepped down and made room for one successor. The 36-year period in which there were multiple rival popes